Ray moved to Alaska in 1983 and has stayed put. He and his wife Michelle own and operate the Soho Coco Contemporary Art and Craft Gallery, located on a spawning stream in the former red light district of Katchikan. The gallery features Ray's own artwork, t-shirts, and fish choo-choo, as well as original artwork by other local artists. Over the years, Ray has done artwork for various conservation organizations, including the Sierra Club, Greenpeace, and the Southeast Asia Conservation Council. Welcome, Ray Troll.
It's really great to be here in Boston, and it's only my second day in Boston. Oh, you want me to wear that?
Yeah, I want you to wear these. Mostly for the camera.
For the camera. All right. But they can hear me.
They can hear you.
Nevertheless. Uh-oh.
There.
Spondy died. Gave away my punchline.
Sorry.
Just go right to that. Yeah, I live in Katchikan, and that's kind of a low-res JPEG there of one of my T-shirts, Careful What You Fish For. Most people know me by the T-shirts, but I'm going to give you the short version of the story of my life and my work. I'll kind of dodge from side to side here. Let's see, some of you are trying to see the image there. I'm this kid right here. I'm the middle kid in a brood of 6 Air Force brats. My father was in the Air Force. And this is sitting in the front porch of my grandparents' house in Corning, New York. It's about 1964, just shortly before we moved down to Puerto Rico. And of the 6 kids in this little group here, there's 4 of us that live in Alaska now. And just something about the state of Alaska that's kind of pulled us there. And we lived in 11 different places during the course of our lives together. But this is my most ridiculous photograph ever taken. This is me in Pennsylvania. This is my worst photograph. I decided that I was going to be creative and make my very own Halloween costume. And that's my robot costume. I walked around Middletown, Pennsylvania, actually like that. And that's my kid sister right there. And look at how. Fortunately, my creative juices got flowing a little bit better after this. But yes, no, on, off, and there I am. That's about circa 1963. This is circa 1972. That's me right there. The 60s were good to me. This is in Kansas, and this is a communal house that I lived in. And no, that's not Charles Manson down there. Kind of looks like him though. And this is circa 1981. And by this time, I moved from Kansas. I went to high school in Wichita, Kansas. Father was in the Air Force, kept moving around, and then after I got out of high school, I moved out to the Northwest. So I made this great migration out to the Northwest. I ended up going to graduate school at Washington State University, and this is my graduate professor that I studied under, and her name is Jo Hockenhall, and this is her husband, Jim Hockenhall, and this is one of my fellow MFAs over here. We were in an art band. We called ourselves Zuzu and the Robot Slave Boys. We were huge. We played in Spokane once. Once, yeah, Anyways, flash forward to 1983. I just got this photograph from a friend of mine who took this of me. And I had an MFA in my back pocket at that point, and I had moved up north to Katchikan, Alaska, where my sister had a little seafood shop going. And I was kind of looking for something to do. And she hired me on to help out, so I went north as a fishmonger. So a fishmonger with a Master of Fine Arts degree. And actually, this is one of my very first pieces of Alaskan art that I did. I did this little sign here, the smoked salmon sign. And there I am, a monger of fish, holding out these fish. But what started happening is I started looking at these creatures. This is the town of Katchikan. This is taken from my house, looking down the Tongass Narrows here. It's a town of about 14,000 people. It's on an island called Revillagigedo Island. It's in the Alexander Archipelago, which is that big band of islands that comes down along the coast of southeast Alaska. Cruise ships come here by the hundreds, roughly 1 million people a year now coming. They come down the Narrows here and they dock right down here and they line up. It's a huge influx over the last 25 years. It's exponential, the growth of the cruise ship industry. But it's kind of a sort of clean industry. It's not without its faults, but basically it's just made this into a really thriving border community, and the art community there in this town has really kind of taken off, and that's where my career started kind of going places. It rains 200 inches a year. I think New York gets 30-ish. You guys probably get 30-ish, right? Something like that. Seattle gets about 35 inches. We get 200 inches. So it keeps you indoors doing artwork in the wintertime. And this is a photograph that was taken out of an apartment building I lived in for a while. And just along the waterfront. This is circa 1984. And one of the big scenes up along the coast of Alaska, of course, is the salmon industry and the whole huge influx of migrant workers and college kids and teenagers. There's this whole group, as the salmon move in every summer, there's this whole group of workers that moves in. And this is the slime line, is what they call it. And the slime line in the local canneries and local fresh seafood processors. There's this whole culture built around it. And I had landed smack dab in the middle of this huge fish culture. And I loved it. And this is a view from my little shack looking out there toward the cruise ships. But I began to catch fish like this, so I was basically in a fishing paradise up there. Not only was I selling fish and starting to hang out with people that were going out commercially fishing, I began to sports fish, I began to relate to fish scientists. And like I said, it was this whole huge culture just being revealed to me. But catching an animal like this, a magnificent creature, and you begin to want to know more about the animal. This looks like a cartoon character almost. This is what we call a red snapper up there. It's a yellow-eye rockfish. I didn't know at the time that this fish was probably about 100 years old. Very long-lived fish. And I actually have contributed to the demise of this fish because I love these fish. I kept going out, catching them, and then after a while, we weren't catching them anymore. What had happened? They're slow-growing fish. But there I am as a young guy with my cool mustache at the time. And this is about 1984. I had that printmaking degree in my back pocket, like I said. So I knew how to pull a squeegee. I knew how to do a lino cut print. But I began to do these goofy T-shirts. And I did them for a seafood festival that happened in Katchikan for a few years there in the early 80s. And this is one of my little instant murals that I've done in the background here. But it's a T-shirt that says, "Let's Spawn." So I printed each one individual fish there one by one and hung these out to dry in my studio. And this is up above the slime line in the cannery that I was buying fish from. And this is my lovely wife, Michelle. I married her in 1985. We got a couple of kids. And I started making these T-shirts. Michelle helped me out with some design choices. She's a designer, graphic designer. I met her up in Katchikan. She worked at the local newspaper there. And I decided to do these, after I started printing these shirts, decided to have some of my friends pose like supermodels. So here we are, all lined up. Got them all. This is very 80s looking kind of group here with the big hair and stuff. Shot a few fashion shots like this, but during that festival, over that one weekend, I sold a couple of hundred shirts, and I went, that was interesting. 200 shirts in 2 days. Wow. So I started doing more and more of these T-shirts. But I began to be inspired more by, the big fish. That's the big halibut there. So this is a piece that's called The Avenging Halibut. And raised as a Catholic. There's kind of biblical kind of stuff. There's sort of Catholic issues going on here. Flaming fish, something about, that's my cell phone over there. Oh, I knew it. I'm giving you a lecture now. You should have turned it off. Sorry about that. This is the avenging halibut. Halibut, the only time I like kicking butt. Something fishy going on. This is in 1984. And look, that's kind of interesting there. It's a little, sort of the actual thing going on there. Look at all that hair. No silver in that either. But I was quickly becoming Mr. Fishhead. And here I am over here. And this is a massive, actually this drawing is, it's not the best reproduction here, but that's the actual size of the drawing. I love getting these big, giant pieces of paper up on the wall. And this is a piece I did, I think, about 1990 or so. And for any of you that might be artists, it was an interesting exercise in that I took a giant piece of white paper, took black pigment, rubbed it into the paper, and made the whole piece of paper black. In the course of rubbing all that pigment out of the paper, I absolutely destroyed my studio, and there was an inch of charcoal dust everywhere. But then I drew the whole thing with an eraser. And so here I am down here. I've got a ratfish on my head. Here's my wife back here. But just a depiction of, I just started creating a sort of an organic composition. I started at one side, would do something, and then do a response to it. Just every day go out and see where the next step was going to be. I knew I wanted to kind of get to a parade kind of thing. But I think I was actually touring the aquarium today with Scott, and there's a nice Brett sculpin. Yeah, I learned something new about Brett sculpin today. It's in the tank there. Twin Peaks was on the radio, on the TV at the time. Darn it. Excuse me. I've learned my lesson there. Twin Peaks was on the TV at the time, so there's my allusion to it, Twin Peaks. We all had to watch it. This is another drawing that was done with the eraser, just using subtractive, make the paper black and just lift off the whites. It's really fun to do that. And have little touches of white coney crayon, but basically drawing with the eraser. And I did this after the very first time I caught my first king salmon. 41. My very first king salmon was 41 pounds. Been fishing for 5 minutes and caught it. It just kind of changed my life. You catch a big fish, it'll blow you away. But it's this transition that just beginning to be. I was an art student. I never really paid much attention to biology class during my college years or during my high school years. But I've always had kind of an ongoing interest in science. But it was this transition, these beautiful silvery salmon we're going through. I was also living down along Katchikan Creek. These beautiful animals that turn into these beasts. So humpies from hell. These are humpback salmon. Began to kind of inform the work. Rousseau's humpies there. By our history background there. Humpies are pink salmon or humpback salmon. Then I did this image. Did this image in 1987, and this one seemed to kind of hit the zeitgeist or something of the Northwest at the right time, and by this point the t-shirt thing was just starting to take off. And Steve has got one of the original shirts. There you are. Steve, if you want to display yours, can I have you as a model? Can you actually just rip open? He quietly revealed this to me today. He's got one of the original shirts. It's very, very cool.
I'm a devotee, and this is.
I always think it's great to have.
This is really something that
check it out.
That Ray's drawn attention to this.
Ta-da!
This is a collector's item, and it's only on special occasions that I'll put this one on.
I know. Thank you. That's so cool.
You have to move back a little bit so we can see. Thank you.
There you go.
Let the camera see too.
All right, you got one of the original seats, and then we went to color after that. But he's got one of the original ones. So just to show you how much this was this. Well, thank you, Steve. All right.
Anytime I can be of help.
But from time to time, this seemed to be, so if I'm sort of known as, oh, Ray Troll, yeah, he's the Spawn Till You Die guy. Okay, that guy. So it seems to me maybe that's the one thing that will be put as my epitaph on my tombstone or something. I've seen the shirt show up on TV shows and in movies from time to time. It seems that if there's a crazy guy or a dangerous guy, or they central casting calls and give him a Spawn Till You Die T-shirt. So here's Steve Zahn. This is from a movie called Chelsea Walls with Steve Zahn and Uma Thurman is in it. So excited. And then there's the crazy guy. Every time he shows up, he's babbling, he's in the elevator, he's wearing the Spawn Till You Die shirt. And here's a bad guy from a film called Cosmic Ray, a minor film done in the Northwest. And then this is my favorite one. Motley Crue. This is Tommy Lee over there. This is Mick Mars there. This is from Hit Parader magazine. There he is, wearing the Spawn Till You Die t-shirt. So I try to keep track of those cultural sightings. And there's one of the young ladies that works at the Soho Coho. Now she makes the shirt look good there. She's wearing one of the hoodies. Know your salmon, bub. Gotta get to know your salmon, the sockeye, the kings, the dogs, the pigs, the humpies. There ain't no nookie like Chinookie. So not true. Mad cow, happy salmon. Try to keep abreast of the times. Don't wear this shirt in Kansas. Not advisable. They don't get it. Here's last year's big hit, the Da Vinci cod. Mona was a cannery girl. Grateful Dead. This looks really cool on time. Some of you may have seen the coffee or drank some of the coffee, Dead Man's Reach, served in bed, raised the dead, the Ravensbrew coffees. I did all the Ravensbrew labels, ravensbrew.com. Check them out. Really love collaborating with those guys. The Dead Man's Reach is a great blend. Here's the stream. If you must smoke salmon. Fish are not for farming. Eat wild salmon. It's that dilemma of wild fisheries. It actually sometimes it really makes economic sense to eat the wild fish. And Scott and I have been talking about this with the repercussions with Brazilian tropical fish trade, and how it's actually a good thing to support the tropical wild fish trade coming out of Brazil. It's a sustainable thing. That's what's going on up in Alaska. Walk softly and carry a big fish. Teddy Roosevelt. That's what he meant to say. Death is certain. Fishing is not. It's a cheerful t-shirt. Try to keep abreast of the times. Queer eye for the sockeye. Bravo Channel last year. This is a big painting I did for a local elementary school. It's actually half the painting, called Midnight Run. This is a painting I did for the local high school, the 1% for Art program that we have up there. And the local high school, they're known as the Katchikan Kings. So I did the proposal to do a gigantic painting of kings. And so we have king salmon there, but everything in this big mosaic is a king. So you can test your king knowledge, and just to see how hip the crowd is.
King Crimson.
Who knew that one? Some of the old hippies from way back. King Crimson. Show that to high school kids, they have no idea. But anyways, yeah, Burger King's over there. Got King of the Hill right over there. Elvis, of course. Anybody know that one there? Some of you were raised with him. Huh? That's right. Well, what's his name? From Mr. Rogers. King Friday the King Friday the 13th. Yeah, because we're in Kings. Actually, now here's one that's kind of obscure. Right up here, he's got a cowboy hat on. His daughter Penny is with him, and they're in the cab of an airplane.
Sky King.
Sky King. Got it? Yeah, the 50s. I remember growing up with that. Yeah. So that's how big that painting is. Took me a year to do that. Had a great time. Then actually, when we put the painting up and we installed it in the high school, it was fun because I did not put up the ID chart for a month. I raised some money in the community, about $3,000 for a scholarship for the kid that could actually name the most kings without any help from mom and dad. So it was fun to see. There's 68 squares up there, and yeah, you're still quizzing yourself. You know that one? That's Yertle the turtle, king of all you could see. Dr. Seuss. So it's fun being all obscure about it. Actually, I think there's. Huh?
Who got them? I mean, how many yeses?
I think there's 68, and the kid got 50 of them, which is pretty good. Some of these, like here's Billie Jean King down here. Some of these are really, really ultra obscure. You know, the Lady of the Lake and King Arthur.
What's that test one?
This one?
Yeah.
That's just the Webster's definition of king. But this is Elrathia Kingi and Trilobite. Yeah. That's obscure. That's the intention. Alaska, the last great adventure. Here's my religious shirt. Family that prays together, stays together. Solemn thing. Here's the real Alaska, bear attack and art opening. But the other really wonderful thing about living in a town like Katchikan, the rain-soaked town of Katchikan, is that I'm up there in a town that is, there's been a great tradition of art going on along the southeast Alaska coast for thousands of years, maybe more like 10,000 years. And artists along the way making their names and establishing their careers, and just the great totemic art that's happened. And Katchikan is kind of like the epicenter for carvers, and there's a carving center there, and watching other artists, my contemporaries, kind of establish their careers. This is a friend of mine by the name of Israel Shotridge. He's a Tlingit carver. This is his very first totem that told the story of the creation of salmon. And this is the finished totem a couple of years later. It's kind of weathered. But when this went up, Israel asked me to do a piece of art that would commemorate the totem raising. It's such a great thing to have this community-wide celebration when this big piece of art goes up. And this was given out at the Potlatch, which is this big party that's given. And you give out a lot of stuff. And so it tells the same story as what's going on in the pole. So all the characters are actually kind of surrounding the pole. And, this is a story that was told by his particular tribe, the Tongass tribe within the Tlingit Nation. So, kind of, boning up on, when I first went up there, I didn't have much of appreciation for totemic art, but you begin to develop an eye for it, and you start, being able to tell styles from one another. And I'm a bit of a history nerd, too, and really started studying up on some of the events that happened in Southeast Alaska. And I started out drawing battles when I was a kid. So a couple years back, I kind of let myself take some time off and do another battle drawing because nobody had ever done a drawing of this particular battle, where the Tlingits attacked the Russian settlement in Sitka, and there were a number of American sailors that actually helped out in the attack. That's what that guy is, right back there. And I'm the dead guy down there. I always like to be the dead guy. I think I showed myself as the dead guy earlier in the Amazon. the show. But anyways, I researched all these helmets. These are magnificent helmets. These are, this is a shark helmet right here. It's in the Film Museum. This is a shark helmet from the Smithsonian. This is Grimacing Warriors from the American Museum in New York City. Actually, there's a number of these from New York City. These suits of armor are actually, you can see them in the American Museum. Fish Wars, it's kind of a random, pass backwards. Fish are now fishing for humans. They're using liquor and money and literature, which is getting no attention. There's always this little things. Metalhead, Born to Be Wild. This is the famous Hell's Anglers image. I did this T-shirt, and about a month after we released the T-shirt, we heard that there were some Hell's Angels in Northern California that let it be known to the various retailers not to ever sell the shirts again. So we choose your battles. I chose to stop making the T-shirt. So it's become quite a collector's item. I've heard about it going on for sale on eBay for lots of money. Those that have these shirts, super rare T-shirt. Rebel Without a Cod. This one, we did 24 of these shirts in 1990, and then James Dean Estate said, no, you can't do those. We have more lawyers than you, and we will fight you if you want to do this. Because I asked permission, and they said no. So only 24 of those were ever made. I thought it was kind of cool. They said, no, Mr. Dean would not appreciate it if he was still alive. Yeah, he would. Cutthroat businessmen. Down up Walleye Street. Fish are calling. Kingfisher the Raven and the Half Moon Run. Rapture of the Deep. There is no free lunch. I've seen somebody actually tattoo this all the way around their wrist. They came up to me once and said, hey, look at this. A book signing. That was kind of cool. I have people every now and then that write to me and ask me if it's okay to tattoo my stuff on their body. I say, sure, yeah. If you want my art and your body for the rest of your life, go for it. No problem with it. The only thing is I just ask that people send me a picture. Gloria Steinem is purported to have said this, and when she was interviewed about it, she said, no, I didn't come up with that. I just saw it on a T-shirt somewhere. So, it's quoted in a U2 song. It's just out there in the zeitgeist. Nobody seems to know, but this is my homage to that great phrase. Cult to the Ratfish. I belong to that cult. It's a small cult. Sometimes later that the spirits of all the fish are going to come back to haunt me. Kelp forest. This is a painting I did of rockfish of the Northeast Pacific. And over the years I've begun to do a few more of these kind of things where, I don't know, every other year I might do a book cover for an ichthyological tome of some sort. And this is one I did for Milton Love. And just filled it up with rockfish. It's a beautiful genus of fish found primarily along the west coast of America, creating a fisheries mosaic. This is, they do a lot more of that. Now this is that photograph of that fish tank we were talking about earlier. This is probably one of the strangest commissions I've ever had. But it was a lot of fun to do. My art is in the back of this tank. It's a private aquarium in a young, I think she's 6 or 7 years old now. It's in her playroom. Some people do have a lot of money. And well, what was fun about meeting these people was that they wanted to have something special in this little area. And this is in Pacific Grove, and literally just to the right of this tank, it's overlooking the Pacific Ocean. It's right there on the beach. But it was fun to collaborate with some guys from Tenji, which are like this private aquarium consulting group that Scott knows. Some of you other guys know here. But they took elements from my drawing and actually had them sculpted, and some of these are actual fish right here, kind of floating, swimming through the tank. And they can change out the art in the back. It's illuminated from the back, and the little original drawings that I did are hanging to the right of the tank. And it was just a blast to do this thing. So you can see there's a snorkeler kind of lurking in the back there. Here's that cool effect. Wild puffins for my flesh. Yow, Alaska. This is a t-shirt that didn't sell so well. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And some of you guys, some of you older folks, what's the album cover I'm riffing on here? It's a modification of, chest in your, Frank Zappa's Weasels Rip My Flesh, which is one of the best album covers of all time. So I wanted to do like an elastic version of it. This also was a t-shirt that did not sell too well at all. I just hate those little Life is Good t-shirts, don't you? I don't know. It's kind of, so death is not bad. But it's so true. The hospice organization was really big in this. They were in a couple hundred. But whatever, you can. Yes, so science began to inform my art more and more over the years as I got deeper and deeper into the topic of fish. I wanted to know more. They were leading me in different places. This is a ratfish here in this jar. I had specimens sitting all over my studio. There's a painting behind me. And then I met this guy, and some of you know this guy. His name is Mr. Brad Matson. We were a blind date put together by an editor in about 1990. Wanted to do a book. My first book was Shocking Fish Tales. So they teamed me up with this guy who was sort of like my soul brother. You know, he's also a military brat, raised Catholic, and kind of known up and down the West Coast. But he's a great writer and was an editor of National Fisherman magazine at the time. And we just immediately hit it off. Did our first book together, and then we wanted to do it. We had a great time doing it. Wanted to do another one after that. So we decided that we were going to do a book that was going to be called. It was going to actually be more of a travel log about Southeast Alaska. It ended up. That's at least what it said in the proposal, the book proposal. It ended up being a book that explained the entire history of life on the planet, and we ended up calling it Planet Ocean: Dancing to the Fossil Record. And here's Brad, right down here. And like I said, great writer, journalist, and here's me over there on the old air mattress there. I'm drinking a can of Copra Light beer. And Copra Lights are actually fossilized dinosaur turds. So there's all kinds of, this is the cover of the book, actually, and it kind of covers the different themes that we cover in the book. There as you begin to get up on the topic of science and the history of life, there are different stories about how we all came to be here, different versions of how we came to be here. So over here I have Noah's Ark, and over here this is the beagle. It actually says the beagle there in the front, Darwin's beagle. And this is my second grade teacher right here. Sister Mary James. She is holding a ruler. She's kind of shaking at me. And it all kind of comes from an incident that I remember distinctly. I've told the story a number of times now, but in the second grade, we were talking about Noah's Ark. And I was a young paleo nerd. And this is 1962, Middletown, Pennsylvania, at the school, the Seven Sorrows of the Blessed Virgin. And we're talking about Noah's Ark, and she was saying that dinosaurs were no longer on the earth because they were not part of God's plan, so they did not get on the ark. But I'm a young paleo nerd, see, and I know all my dinosaurs, and I know all my prehistoric creatures, and I know about plesiosaurs. So my little hand shoots up, and I say, "But sister, what about the plesiosaurs?" They didn't have to be on the ark. They were marine reptiles. She didn't know what I was talking about. Please, you know what? And I was basically told to just sit down and be quiet. She can hit me with the, but I knew right then. Wait a minute. There's these different stories that are being told here. Hence the devil that's pulling down the plesiosaur there. That's kind of my own personal iconography that's in there. But it's always interesting to hear what other people bring to this. Get some dice being thrown back there. There's sort of the hand of somebody up there. But these are various creatures and things. So actually in this book we explore that, like I said, the history of life. This is a dancing fossil record, and there they are dancing the old fossil record. What Brad and I did in the book is we did a big road trip from Canada all the way to Kansas and back. And we stopped at fossil sites along the way. We went to museums along the way. And we basically were students of the topic of the history of life. And it all goes back to the ocean. And this is the story of the Cambrian explosion, too. We went to the Burgess Shale in British Columbia. These are some of the bizarre animals from the Cambrian explosion. And this little guy right there, with just a hint of a backbone, is our kin right there. Pikaia, a little 1-inch long creature that has just a hint of a backbone. But that's our relative. That's us in the big family tree. And I drew this big tree out after consulting with a few scientists. But basically, I just sat down. This is the family tree, an artist version of the family tree with a ratfish bias. So the ratfish branch of the tree is very big up there. But tracing life on the planet all back to one point. Life has only evolved once on the planet, as far as we know. All going back to one moment. But it was also this point in the evolution of life that, as Brad and I were working on the book, and when you really start looking at the big picture, you realize that we have a lot to learn from fish, and probably one of the most profound things we have to learn from fish is that we really are fish. And at first it seemed like a ludicrous joke, and we were talking. If you're paying attention in your science class, they're telling you this. But not in so many words. We are fish. If you draw the cladograms out, we're of that tribe. That's what the vertebrates are. We're variations on the fish body plan. These are my fins. And as we began to have fun with this idea, and it's true. It was kind of fun to shock people with you are a fish. Most of us could take it back to the apes, the hominids, and we understand that part of it. But really, when you look at the big scheme of things, it's this point in life. It's actually a very major point in life. This happened about 375 million years ago. In this drawing, it's an animal called Panderichthys, and this is an animal called Acanthostega. The animals, when you look at their skeletons, are almost virtually identical, except one has got fins, and another one's got 8 toes. The first tetrapods had like 8 toes. They had more than 5. Eventually, evolution pared that down to basically kind of a standard 5. But they're almost absolutely identical. Even since this book was done, that little gap has been narrowed down. There's now an animal that we know called Tiktaalik that's even closer. That's got maybe more of an elbow in here. But basically, walking around telling people, and I can get the Venn diagrams up here to start telling you why it is that you are a fish, why we really are fish. Everything, we're the hominids. You are here right now. Every circle that surrounds you is what we belong to. So you are a primate, you are a mammal, you are an amniote, you're not an amphibian, you are a tetrapod, you are a lobe-finned fish, you're not a ray-finned fish, you're a bony fish, you're a vertebrate, you're a chordate. But you are a lobe-finned fish. A lungfish is more closely related to you than it is to other fish. Lungfish are your kin. And we began to have fun with this idea that we are fish, and maybe the fish left the water all those years ago, so someday they can have cheeseburgers. A little bit of an esoteric joke. The lucky fish gets the cheeseburger. This is on my website, the way we were, Path of Human Evolution, there at the end. So there's the steps along the way. I actually have this kind of animated on my website. catch of the day, paleo fishing charters, trout waiting for dinosaurs to go away. So along the way too, doing what eventually happened with all the artwork from Planet Ocean book is I had this big pile of stuff after the book came out. I approached the museum. I said, this would make a great exhibit if we had some fossils in here. And I approached the Burke Museum in Seattle. And in 1994, we had a display there. It ended up traveling around the nation. Ended up finally at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. So this is a big ammonite installation that we did there, showing you how we did these sort of instant murals with projectors and teams of volunteers. So here's the finished installation at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. All the originals from the book. It grew to 14,000 square feet at this point. And there's the saber-tooth salmon. This is also featured in the book. It's a fish that I kind of stumbled across in literature that was so amazingly cool. People really think I was dreaming it up, but no, it's an actual salmonid, the extinct relative of the sockeye salmon, 10 feet long. This is the holotype at the University of Oregon in Eugene. It allowed me to take the holotype out and lay it down on the sidewalk outside. It's about a 6-footer, but there are bigger ones. Like I said, a 10-foot salmon. So out at the Denver Museum, this is one of the crazier things we did in the exhibit. I said, well, if we're going to have the saber-tooth salmon, we should have it fighting with a saber-tooth tiger. So talking about dealing with your exhibit committees and trying to convince them that you're not absolutely insane. They just so happened to have a saber-tooth tiger that was sitting in a closet in the back and hadn't been used in a while. I said, let's construct a saber-tooth salmon, have the clash of the giant saber-tooths. So they went for that idea. Kirk is now the vice president at the Denver Museum, so he was just the curator of paleontology earlier. But he convinced them to take the exhibit as it traveled around. But I was able to work with their exhibit staff, and we did these different tables and things. So this is a trilobite table, we did an ammonite table, we did a fossil fish table. But the coolest and the craziest thing that we did was this next one. I pitched this idea to various museums, and they finally indulged my weird vision to do the Volvo. My original idea was to do this as an ancient fish tank and actually have lungfish and gars and stuff in this, or just put lungfish in there and say that you're related to lungfish. But no, this is the Volvo. We took a Volvo. And there's Charles Darwin over there driving it. There's a lobefin fish there. Volvo. It's got ammonites in the hubcap. It's got trilobite up there. Honk. Honk if you love trilobites, fueled by fossils. Your mama was a fish. And there's a videotape of me dabbling on right now. It's in the back of the. So that was like the art car. This is the installation when it went to the Oregon Coast Aquarium. And we have some large, this is a big teleos from Kansas, it's attacked this. There's a saber-tooth salmon. Here's some of the saber-tooth salmon fossils. These are the originals hanging on the wall. But just this instant wall painting, just to kind of take a whole space and fill it full so you kind of get the full-on experience. This is the experience as it rolled on out to Philadelphia at the Academy of Natural Sciences in 1998. And we did this in a black light at the front. And we actually had a big disco ball in there. We had a soundtrack going. Painted the dance floor here. But here's the mother. The mother was a fish. There's the fish. And yes, we are all a fish. And here's a lungfish tank here. It says, meet your cousin, the lungfish, right there. And big images painted on the wall, little originals around it. Back here is a gar tank, and with all kinds of bad gar puns written all over it. Maybe you can drive my gar when you wish upon a gar. And my favorite one was, if gars were outlawed, only outlaws would have gars. The thing is, they are outlawed in many states. I love those anti-fish laws. Sharks are another whole big area of interest for me. There's a big drawing there in the back. And prehistoric sharks, of great interest to me, and Paleozoic sharks in particular, and just because they're so underappreciated, little known, I began to form some relationships with these guys, the few people in the world that are working on them. This is like a kid in a candy store. I'm just going nuts here. Because it's like the first drawings being done of a lot of these animals. And there's this one particular shark right there that I've obsessed on for years, called the helicoprion. You can kind of see sort of different variations as I think about kind of honing it down. But this is a little closer to what I think it looked like, and even then I'm still kind of working on this. But these are large spirals of teeth that are found in Idaho. Some of the best specimens, been known for well over 100 years. Specimens from Russia, Australia, Japan. It was a pelagic animal, but large, big serrated teeth. And I became rather obsessed with this and tried to figure it out, and I think that's basically what it looked like right there. It's a related form, a gigantic scissor tooth shark is what I call it. It just looks like a big pair of scissors. But now, I just found out about 2 weeks ago from an email from one of the few guys working on these that there were 2 blades on the top. 2. And these teeth are this big, megalodon size. So they're big. The only, I'm sitting in the back room at the American Museum. That's just gigantic. There it is, my ratfish. Excuse me. Just a couple more here. This is from Sharkabat, my shark book from A to Z. And I gave a talk earlier in the day today on my experiences down in the Amazon, and this has grown into a big exhibit that's now traveling around the nation. With the Miami Museum of Science, they were the ones who got the NSF grant. It's at the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry for another 3 days. Excuse me, and then it opens at the Academy of Natural Sciences, Philadelphia, on June 1st. Piranhas. Big, giant catfish. Been down to the Amazon 3 times. Arowana. Such a wonderful experience to go down there. That was Moasir Fortes, and Moasir tells the story of the 7 plagues of the Amazon River. The electric eel, the stingray, the piranha, the anaconda, the caiman, the piraeva, and then the dreaded kangaroo. Actually, to spare you the agony, I will not go into that one. I'll tell you privately about that one. But this is a large mural that I did after I went down there for the first time. I went with Brad, actually, in '97. And I spent about a year working on this mural. 7 by 15 feet. Brad's on the back deck of the boat. He's got a cocktail in his hand. Actually, I'm back here right next to him. If you look at the original, which is in the exhibit, I'm wearing a life jacket, and I've got a fishing rod. Brad's got a cocktail. But all kinds of detail in this. Here are some of the kangaroo right in here, actually, these little guys. They're parasitic catfish, and they jam their way into the gills of bigger catfish. And sometimes they make a terrible mistake, which I won't go into, unless you want me to. Okay, I won't. And this is a couple of years ago. This is, I look at these things in terms of years. Spent almost a year in the Amazon painting. I spent almost a year in the king painting, and I spent about a year on this drawing. And that's how big the drawing is. It's a pen and ink drawing. Then I scanned the whole thing. We added digital color. But this is for the next book. It's with Kirk Johnson from the Denver Museum, and so his museum's right down here. And what Kirk and I did is we loaded into a big blue Denver Museum truck and drove all through the American West. So the next book is called Cruising the Fossil Freeway, the Best of the Fossil West. And we went to, and this time I was going with a guy, a paleontologist, and we went to all these great fossil sites. And that book is out from Fulcrum Press in October. It took about 7 years. This is my studio. So my commute to my workplace is just across the driveway. And I built this in 95 with a carpenter friend of mine. And that's where I try to get it all done out there. And with that, I've been talking for about 50 minutes. I think that's probably enough. Fish worship, I hope I've answered this question. It is not wrong. Thank you.